Virgo 22, a royal coat of arms. Now, a coat of arms, a royal coat of arms, indicates authority, ancestry, power, responsibility. It's a very important emblem of our community. And this whole idea of having somebody more important than everyone else in the community is a very controversial subject. And yet it's approached in a rather silly way by most people. The idea that we're all equal is absurd. We're not. There are people who really cannot take responsibility for themselves, let alone a small group of people that they happen to be part of. And then when you start to imagine the idea that they could control the workings, the policies, the economics of a larger unit, a company or a country, it's just silly. You know, the idea that we can manage ourselves individually is not valid. We need leaders. Any group of people needs a leader. It's like a ship. It needs a captain. That's because in the end somebody has to make the decision. Now, whether that's a king or a president or an elder in the tribe, it's the same principle here that we're discussing, the principle of the aristocracy of self. And whereas in some cases that's passed down, sometimes from father to son, sometimes it has been matriarchal, from mother to daughter. In other cases, there's a council who elect their leader. And in other cases, it's recognized as a birthright. In Tibet, for example, the Dalai Lama is chosen because he reincarnates after death as the next Dalai Lama. There are all sorts of ways of distinguishing who is top of the tree, as it were. And that's secondary. What we're discussing here is the fact that somebody is at the top and that they have, therefore, a position to maintain. And that position is the archetype of aristocracy. Now, in Sufism, it is discussed that the ego is subject to democracy, but the soul is subject to aristocracy. So when we're actually lost in our stuff, when we cannot be anything other than subjective in our decisions and our policies and our responses, then we're in the ego position. And therefore democracy is more appropriate. We are the same as everybody else who is in their own position of ego. And so then democracy makes some kind of sense. But when you tune into soul consciousness, when you reach that level of awareness that the subjective interpretation of what's going on is not important, that's secondary. What we have to do in positions of leadership is to be objective, to take into account everyone for whom we have responsibility, even if it goes against our own personal best interests. And this is the position that we're discussing here, the aristocracy of somebody who takes on that level of social stewardship. They need to tune in to the highest within themselves, the soul, and then they can find aristocracy. So if this is an important degree in your chart, if your sun or your moon or whatever planet is there, the potential lies within you to put aside matters of lesser importance, of selfish, self-centered importance, put them aside from time to time at the very least, in order to claim the authority of your aristocracy. In other words, to be highly responsible, to be aware of the group and its needs and its visionary direction, and to make decisions, to influence people, to cause things to happen in accordance with the interpretation you have of the best needs of the community. And there is a claiming of power here. This is not necessarily bestowed. Whereas the coat of arms does bestow power from generation to generation and acts as an emblem of that aristocratic power. In the current era, these traditions have lost their power. We do not respect tradition in the same way as we used to. And therefore somebody who actually has this sense of aristocracy, in this sense of social stewardship as a high level of responsibility, typically they have to make a claim, or at least an announcement in some form. So perhaps they present themselves on YouTube nowadays, or in writing in a book or whatever, speaking in such a way as to resonate with the collective need for leadership. Leaders typically have to have the ability to claim the power that they wield. If it's given to a weak person, if kingship is bestowed upon somebody who just has not got the clout to hold on to it, typically it's removed in one of two ways. Either there's a coup, there's a usurping on the political level, or more likely, those around the leader are actually manipulative, and the leadership is invested in an indistinguishable, shadowy, power-possessing group behind the leader. And I think we have this in politics in the current era, where a weak leader is in position and thoroughly manipulated by family and advisors and so on. And therefore the community is in danger, because the leadership is not authentic and there is no aristocracy present. Many of our political leaders really lack this quality of dignity. Aristocracy is the highest level of expression of respect. Respect for self, respect for the country, respect for tradition, respect for the position of office. Aristocracy is that. And if somebody has a position of office and they do not behave in a manner incumbent within that, then the office itself loses credibility and loses power, and chaos unfolds inevitably. It must be really clear that in the world today we have people in positions of great power who have no sense of personal dignity whatever. They behave in a foolish way for selfish purposes, and so aristocracy is lost. And for all we grumble at the people that have got their rich houses and they live in castles and palaces, and particularly in England, this is a really rich tradition. And the common folk complain on the one hand and nevertheless go and look at their finery on the other. And they complain about the fact that people should all be equal. Well, it's nonsense. We're not all equal. We might be given the potential at birth to claim as much as anyone else, and even that's doubtful. But most assuredly, by the time we've reached any age at all, we have either claimed our potential or lost our potential. And we end up being less than others, and some of us end up being greater than others if we choose that path. So when this is your choice, it's incumbent within that choice to claim aristocracy. In other words, to accept the stewardship, to be the exemplar of the community, to take care of the community standards, to live according to the standards of the community, and to be an example, a good example, even the best example of that set of standards.